Imagine this. It's late at night. Your pregnant wife is asleep beside you. The glow of her phone screen catches your eye, a message notification, then another. You hesitate, but curiosity wins. You pick it up. A name you know flashes across the screen. Your father. A judge. Respected. Admired. But the words in those messages, they don't belong between a father and his son's wife. You scroll. Message after message, detailed, intimate. There's no mistaking what's been happening. Your wife, your father, together, and she's carrying your child. Your hands shake. Your breath catches in your throat. You tell yourself there must be a mistake. But the proof is right there, line after line. The trust you've had your entire life, shattered in seconds. The walls feel like they're closing in, and then a thought enters your mind, uninvited and unshakable. What now? The events that followed would send shockwaves through the highest circles of power. A man lay dead, a family torn apart, and a truth so unimaginable that even those closest to them struggled to understand how it had all unraveled. Before we go any further, if you're fascinated by true crime stories that challenge everything you think you know about human nature, make sure to subscribe. These are the cases that leave us questioning, debating, and searching for answers long after the headlines fade. This is the story of power, betrayal, and the moment when loyalty turns to rage. Judge William Carter wasn't just any judge. He was one of the most powerful legal figures in New York, a man whose name commanded respect both in and outside the courtroom. To those who knew him professionally, he was the embodiment of justice, sharp, disciplined, a man whose decisions carried weight, shaping the fate of countless lives. His rulings were firm but fair, his reputation untouchable. And at home, the image was no different. A loving husband, a devoted father, the kind of man people trusted. But trust is a fragile thing, and for Michael Carter, that trust would soon be shattered beyond repair. Michael Carter had always wanted to be like his father. He grew up watching him in the courtroom, studying his mannerisms, absorbing every lesson. Law was in his blood. Following in his father's footsteps wasn't just expected. It was a path he embraced willingly, a future filled with promise, a legacy to continue. And when Michael met Lisa, it felt like everything was falling into place. She was kind, intelligent, someone who made life feel whole. Their wedding was a grand affair. Friends, family, colleagues, all there to witness what seemed to be the start of a perfect life together. A year later, they were expecting their first child. Lisa was glowing with excitement, already planning the nursery, imagining the life they would build together. A future filled with family, love, and stability. But no matter how perfect a picture may seem, there are always details that remain hidden until they can't be ignored any longer. Michael Carter had no reason to question his father, no reason to doubt the woman he loved. While he spent long hours at the law firm, determined to build a life for his growing family, his father and his wife were exchanging messages that should never exist between in-laws. I need you. I can't stop thinking about last night. We shouldn't, but I don't want to stop. It started as something small. A conversation here, a lingering glance there. Maybe it was nothing at first. A compliment that lasted a little too long. A hand on the small of her back when no one was looking. Words whispered just low enough so that no one else could hear. Subtle, harmless. Until it wasn't. These meetings were no accident. By the time Michael noticed something was wrong, they had been happening for months. Secret encounters, lies told in whispers, and a relationship that should have been impossible, growing stronger by the day. Slow motion of Lisa's hand resting on her pregnant belly. A pause, a silence that lingers just a second too long. Lisa wasn't just carrying Michael's child, and soon the truth would come out. Lisa's pregnancy was supposed to be a time of joy, a new chapter, a fresh start. She had spent weeks planning for the baby, picking out names, decorating the nursery, imagining the life she and Michael would build. But when she went in for what should have been a routine checkup, doctors found something alarming. The words on the page blurred before her eyes. HIV positive. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls closer. The air thinner. A mistake. It had to be a mistake. She was pregnant, healthy. This wasn't possible. It didn't make sense. But the results didn't lie. That could only mean one thing. Lisa had been unfaithful, and now she would have to face the consequences. Michael Carter had spent his entire life believing in justice. The law was black and white, right and wrong, truth and deception. But at that moment, as he listened to Lisa's trembling voice over the phone, he realized his own life was nothing but a web of lies. Michael sits at the kitchen table, gripping the test results Lisa had just given him. His leg bounces restlessly under the table. He looks up at her, his face unreadable. Then, his voice cuts through the silence, low, sharp, demanding. "Explain this." Lisa, eyes red and swollen, shakes her head. Tears stream down her face. She tries to speak, but no words come. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. And then she broke. She confessed. Everything. The affair. The lies. The hotel meetings. The stolen moments when Michael wasn't looking. And the worst part? The virus. It hadn't come from some random stranger. It had come from his own father. Michael's breath shudders as he exhales, his hands clenched into fists on the table. His father, his mentor, the man he had spent his life admiring, the man he had trusted more than anyone else. Michael sat in silence as the weight of the truth settled on his chest like a crushing force. His father and his wife, together. The child Lisa carried, was it even his? Or was it the child of a man who had betrayed him in the most unimaginable way? Something inside Michael Carter snapped that night, and soon the world would see just how deep betrayal can cut. Michael had two choices: walk away from the family that betrayed him, or make them pay. No security system could protect Judge Carter from what was coming. No law book could rewrite the damage that had been done. And on the night of August 14th, everything unraveled. When police arrived at Judge Carter's home, they found a nightmare. Blood splattered against the walls, papers scattered across the floor, the metallic scent of gunpowder still hanging in the air. Michael didn't run. He didn't deny it. He didn't even ask for a lawyer. He just sat there, waiting for the police. 911, what's your emergency? Hello, can you speak? Ma'am, are you safe? The most haunting part? Lisa had called 911, but she never said a word. No explanation, no plea for help. Just quiet, broken sobs before the line went dead. Lisa sitting in the back of a police car, her hands trembling. Her face was pale. Her eyes were distant. No one knew what she had witnessed that night. No one knew what she was hiding. And when detectives questioned her, her story would only raise more questions than answers. Because in this case, the truth was far from over. The trial was explosive, a case that gripped the nation, dividing public opinion. The prosecution painted Michael as a cold-blooded killer, a man who planned his father's murder with calculated precision. They called him dangerous, unhinged, someone who couldn't handle betrayal, so he chose revenge. This was not a crime of passion, the prosecutor declared. This was an execution. But the defense had a different story. They didn't deny the crime. Michael had never denied what he did. But they argued that he was a man pushed to the very edge, betrayed not just by his wife, but by his own father, the man who was supposed to guide him, protect him. The affair, the lies, the disease. They claimed it was too much for any man to bear. What would you have done? The defense asked the jury. Could you have sat across from the man who stole your wife? The man who gave her a disease that changed her life forever? The man who might have fathered the child you believed was yours? What does justice look like when the law can't punish the real crime? And then there was Lisa, the woman at the center of it all. When she took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. The whispers in the gallery ceased. The reporters stopped their scribbling. Every eye was on her. She didn't defend Michael. She didn't beg for his forgiveness. Instead, she testified against him. I never wanted to hurt Michael, she sobbed. I was manipulated. I thought I loved Judge Carter, but he controlled me. He convinced me that Michael would never understand, that our love was real. Lisa claimed she had been groomed, that she had been vulnerable, that the judge, a man twice her age, a figure of power, had taken advantage of her. She portrayed herself as a victim, someone caught in the web of a manipulative older man. But then, a shocking revelation came to light. Mrs. Carter, he said, voice measured, is there anything else you'd like to tell the court? Anything you've kept hidden? No, she whispers. Lisa had been lying about more than just the affair. The baby, the child that Michael had spent months believing was his. The child that had been at the center of his grief, his rage, his downward spiral. It wasn't his. The baby wasn't even Judge Carter's either. If the baby didn't belong to Michael, and it didn't belong to the judge, then whose was it? What happened next left everyone in the courtroom speechless, because Lisa's secrets ran even deeper than anyone imagined. And the final revelation? It changed everything. After weeks of testimony, after shocking revelations and betrayals, no one could have imagined the fate of Michael Carter now rested in the hands of 12 strangers. The judge, An older woman with a stern expression, shuffling papers before addressing the court. The courtroom is silent, only the sound of a gavel being lifted. In the case of the People vs. Michael Carter, on the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant not guilty. Michael Carter was found not guilty of first-degree murder, but the jury did not let him walk free. They convicted him on a lesser charge, manslaughter in the first degree, a crime of passion, a murder committed in the heat of the moment, driven by overwhelming emotion, and for that he would pay. Michael Carter, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. And Lisa, she left the courtroom that day, not as a victim, not as an innocent woman caught in a scandal, but as the woman whose lies had sent her husband to prison. She disappeared from public view. No interviews, no statements, just gone. But the biggest question remained: who was the child's real father? A question Lisa refused to answer. Michael Carter was once a man with everything, a legacy to follow, a family of his own, a future filled with promise. But in a matter of months, it had all crumbled around him. His father, gone. His wife, gone. His child, a stranger he may never know. What was written in that letter remains unknown. A plea for forgiveness? A final confession? Or something else entirely? A father and a son, both destroyed by love, lies, and betrayal. A woman whose choices shattered an entire family. And a child, born into a world of secrets, carrying the blood of both father and grandfather. The case of Michael Carter is one of passion, deception, and the irreparable damage of betrayal. But the most haunting question remains: if you were in his shoes, what would you have done?